Playing Pokemon as the bad guy is something that I always wanted to do growing up, and this game lets you do exactly that. Stealing Pokemon and committing crime, all in the name of earning loads of cash, rising through the criminal ranks, and even overthrowing a corrupt government. This is not your typical wholesome Pokemon adventure, and while Pokemon Rocket Edition may sound similar to another game I've already made a video about, this one is a different game made by entirely different people. So, I played through the main story, stealing and defrauding my way through the Kanto region to try and climb the ranks of Team Rocket. Here's what happened. The game begins inside a Team Rocket warehouse in the Sevi Islands, where we decided to enlist as a low-level grunt. We're met by Archer, who basically treats us like dirt, before asking us to step forward and collect our starter Pokemon, Zubat. Seriously? How is this thing supposed to commit crime? It doesn't even have any hands! Regardless, we don't really have a choice, so Zubat is my starter and the first criminal on my team. Archer then goes on to explain that, as grunts, our job is mostly doing the dirty work: extortion, theft, and settling scores for Team Rocket. At this point, we're basically just a thug, armed with an armless Zubat. But if we succeed in our missions, we can earn the respect of Team Rocket and be promoted up through the ranks. The majority of the new recruits are then shipped off to Kanto, while a few of us will instead remain right here on 5 Island, where we'll receive our first mission. Before that though, we do have to prove ourselves by battling through some of the Team Rocket grunts in this warehouse. Although these guys are incredibly weak. In fact, they're so pathetic that it would be genuinely embarrassing if I somehow managed to lose. You've got to be kidding me. After resurrecting my Zubat back to life and clearing through that last grunt, we confront Archer, ready to receive our first mission. This girl next to us is Andra, and she is important in this story. She's a new recruit just like us, and our first mission is a joint one. Basically, there's a local government official who's been helping Team Rocket smuggle goods into Kanto. However, Archer suspects that she might soon turn traitor, which would be very bad for Team Rocket's business. So, to maximize our shareholder wealth, Andra and I are given our first mission, Assault and Extortion. To help us with this mission, Archer hands us one of the most sinister, evil Pokemon to ever walk the earth, Sentret. Yeah, we're supposed to commit crime with these two as our muscle of our operation. I fear we may not be cut out for this. As some background, this story is set 3 years after the Great Pokemon War, whereby Lance and the Johto forces were able to defeat Kanto. As a result, Lance and the Pokemon League are basically a tyrannical government, and while some groups like Team Rocket and the Bikers are actively opposing Lance, his grip over the region is incredibly strong. But we'll learn more about that as the game goes on. Regardless, with our first mission obtained, we head out onto 5 Island. The main reason for giving us Sentret is that this little fluffball knows Surf. And, like real criminals, Team Rocket doesn't abide by the rules of needing a gym badge to use HMs. So, after doing a little bit of training around the island, we surf our way north until we reach the small island known as Resort Gorgeous. And inside this building on the island, we find our target for the first mission. Alright lady, you better stay loyal towards Team Rocket, otherwise you'll have to answer to me and my 2 associates right here. Am I supposed to be scared, or? Since Andra rushed ahead on her own and already lost, we're forced to take on the Consul in a 1v1. However, with 2 menacing bodyguards at my disposal, I was ready to make my criminal debut. But that's not what happened. The Consul's Meowth quickly overpowers our Sentret with Fake Out and Scratch. And while Zubat is able to get the trade, the Consul's second Pokemon is Mareep. Obviously, this is an awful matchup for our flying bat. With 2 quick Thundershocks, Zubat is instantly fried into its grave, and we had already failed on our very first mission. This game is clearly not going to be easy. We didn't even see the Consul's entire team, since she still had another Pokemon in the back. So, despite being electrocuted and embarrassed on our first day on the job, clearly we needed to strengthen up our team of criminals. Thankfully, we do have some options nearby. Not only are there a few extra battles we can do to level up our team, but there are also some extra Pokemon that we can find too. And the first of these is Qwilfish. It may not be the strongest Pokemon, but Qwilfish just looks like it belongs on a team of criminals. So after catching the spiky puffball, we move on to getting our next new Pokemon. This one's a little more abstract since it requires us to complete a short side quest whereby we have to track down some lemonade. But once we steal some from a local chef and hand it over to this guy, he gives us our next Pokemon, Phanpy. Yet another Pokemon who may not exactly scream ruthless criminal, but as a ground type, Phanpy is still a very welcome addition to the team. So after some very tedious grinding on 5 Island, our team was now looking much more formidable. And with that, we once again headed back to the consul's house, ready to earn our revenge. Thanks to our new additions, this time things go much smoother. Our new Qwilfish can intimidate the lead Meowth, as well as set up spikes, which will deal chip damage to each of the consul's Pokemon as they hit the field, after which an onslaught of poison stings eventually finish off the lead Meowth. This causes her to send in the real threat, Mareep, the Pokemon who viciously ended our last attempt. However, this time, we have Phanpy, who makes this very simple. With a few super effective mud slaps, Mareep is quickly buried in the dirt. This leaves only Wooper for us to deal with, which doesn't take long at all, giving us a comfortable win this time around. With the console now subdued, a few extra Team Rocket grunts then arrive on the scene. And to ensure that the console stays loyal to Team Rocket going forward, they basically intend on throwing her into the Lost Cave to think about what she's done. Clearly, this game is going to be very brutal. After picking up the EXP share, we then return to the Rocket Warehouse to report back to Archer. As a reward for completing our first mission, we receive a generous $25,000 bonus, as well as a mysterious Pokemon egg. With that, our time on 5 Island comes to a close, as Archer informs us that we're to immediately set out to the Kanto mainland to join the rest of Team Rocket. So, after a short boat ride, Andra and I arrive in Vermilion City, where the main story really starts to unfold. We see a short cutscene of Professor Oak and Daisy inside the Celadon department store. They talk about how everything is becoming more expensive, and that the people of Kanto are basically not very smart. We then see Oak receive a call from Mr. Lance, which implies that Oak is at least on good terms with Kanto's new dictator. Back in Vermilion City, we briefly run into Surge, who gives us a vague threat about respecting the people here. Other than that, there's not much else we can do in Vermilion, since the area to the east is blocked off by police. Although, we do run into an interesting fisherman. Apparently, someone has been bad-mouthing the Old Rod, which is harming this poor fisherman's reputation. So, he asks us to go and teach that bully a lesson. The offender is located in Celadon City, so we won't be able to deal with it for a while. However, I will not stand for anyone talking smack about my Nuzlocke savior, the Old Rod. After heading north onto Route 6 and battling our way through the trainers here, we enter the underground tunnel where we find Andra. She mentions that she's already hatched her egg that she was given by Archer, and she's also noticed that the people of Kanto seem very hostile towards Team Rocket. Regardless, she then challenges us to a battle with her new and improved roster. Andra's team is actually pretty solid, featuring Tentacool, Zubat, and her newly hatched Teddiursa. But after Phanpy takes care of Tentacool with Mudslap, the rest of our team is just too much for Andra to handle, as our starter Zubat ultimately cleans up the final 2 Pokemon. After the fight, Andra is glad that she has such a strong ally, but still vows to become the strongest, most efficient grunt in Team Rocket. With that taken care of, Andra and I then head north onto Route 5, where we enter the daycare center, which, as it turns out, is actually a secret Team Rocket base. Apparently, this place makes money by secretly selling off eggs from the Pokemon that trainers leave here, which is incredibly disturbing knowledge, and I think I need an adult. The Rocket base is hidden underneath the daycare center, and it's down here that Andra and I meet another Rocket admin, Petrol. He's the main authority in this particular base. After welcoming us, Petrol then assigns us our next mission. Since we're just low-level grunts, our missions are mostly centered around making money. So this time, our job is to join up with the other grunts in Mount Moon and go searching for valuables like fossils, moonstones, and nuggets. Digging up rocks isn't exactly the kind of criminal work I had in mind, but we're not really in a position to refuse any orders. So with a new mission now obtained, Petrol sends us off on our way. Down in this base, we can actually buy Pokémon as well as some useful items like EXP candy, which basically works like a rare candy, but with a built-in level cap that depends on the size of the candy. So after buying a handful of these, our team gets a small boost as everyone is elevated to level 15, during which our Centret is able to evolve into an even more sinister, evil monster, Ferret, a true criminal mastermind with nothing but evil intentions hidden behind its eyes. With our team of supervillains now slightly improved, we leave the rocket base and set out for Mount Moon. On the way, we're stopped by some grunts who invite us to help them with a robbery in Cerulean City. This is pretty straightforward and just involves a quick battle against the hiker that lives here. After a quick victory, the heist is a complete success and we're awarded with the TM for Dig as well as the soft sand held item. Both of these are very useful upgrades for our Fanpy, meaning that as we made our way to Mount Moon, I was feeling confident that we were ready for absolutely anything. Once we arrive, we report to the high-rank grunt, Frank, who's in charge of this mission. He informs us that Andra has already found one fossil, but apparently there's also a mysterious trainer with a war turtle who's beaten up several grunts. So with that warning issued, our mission begins as we commence the search through Mount Moon, desperately trying to find some fossils. After looking around for a while, we eventually manage to find a fossil, as well as the war turtle wielding trainer, Blue. At this point, I was ready to square up and teach this punk a lesson in the name of Team Rocket. But that's not what happened, because instead of battling, Blue decides that fighting me would only be a waste of time. He then walks off, leaving me completely disrespected as a result. At the very least, we are able to find a fossil here, continuing our good work for Team Rocket. Although, on our way back, near the entrance, we run into a mad scientist named Miguel, who also has a fossil. He challenges us to a winner-takes-all match, where the victor receives both fossils. Despite my best efforts though, I have no real way of turning down this offer, so we're basically forced into the gamble. Regardless, we're easily able to win the fight, meaning that both fossils are ours and we had completed yet another mission. However, that's not where this mission ends, because immediately after the battle, we receive a call saying that a dangerous trainer just turned up who is quickly crushing Team Rocket. I'm then ordered to defend the fossils with my life. Guys, I literally have a Zubat. I am not built for this life. But then, a short time later, he emerges. Red. He says absolutely nothing before forcing us into a battle. Alright Keegan, just relax. Stay calm. You can do this. Nope, never mind. We're screwed. Obviously, against a level 32 Charmeleon, we stand no chance here whatsoever. And in no time at all, Red just demolishes our team, one after the other. We were just utterly embarrassed and slapped around by a 10-year-old kid. After regrouping with the rest of Team Rocket, high-rank Frank is furious after hearing that we lost both fossils. He then goes on to say that I'm incompetent and that he's going to recommend that I get cut from Team Rocket completely. Did I miss something here? Didn't we all just get clapped by Red? Why am I the one taking the fall here? Besides, if you guys gave me a better starter than a level 5 Zubat, maybe I could have defended myself. Shut up. Frank then even tries to beat me up in battle, but our Fanpy and Ferret duo quickly put him in his place. Wow, if I'm so weak and pathetic, and you lost against me, that must make you really weak and pathetic. Shut up. With that, Frank declares that the mission is over and orders everyone to return back to base. Once we arrive, having failed miserably in our mission, Petrol is obviously furious, and as punishment, he takes literally all of my money. I got robbed of my fossils and all of my cash. I'm the worst criminal ever. Basically, I'm now in generational debt to Team Rocket. But instead of throwing me into the gulag as punishment, we're given a chance to redeem ourselves with the next mission. Basically, Bill has developed teleportation technology which would be worth millions to Team Rocket. Our mission is therefore to confront Bill and obtain the patent to this technology by using force if necessary. So, after heading north of Cerulean and decimating a whole bunch of trainers along the way, we eventually arrive at Bill's house. However, once inside, we learn that Bill has already aligned himself with Lance and the Pokémon League. A group of police officers then burst through the door and attempt to place me under arrest. You fools! You can't handcuff my Zubat, it has no hands. After fighting off these police officers one after the other, we chase Bill through his garden until confronting him again in a small building at the back. He then informs us that the entire local police department are on their way and forces us into a battle to stall for time. While this fight is pretty tough, thankfully, our ferret just continues being a criminal mastermind, as secret power and quick attack combined with the boost from our silk scarf allows Ferret to slap Bill into the dirt. So with Bill now defenseless, we're clear to steal the patent. Although now the building is completely surrounded by police. I frantically tried to find a secret passage or some other way to escape, but there's no way out and we are doomed. So, with no other choice, we step outside, and they were not lying. They really brought the entire police department just to arrest a 10-year-old. Now facing down every Officer Jenny within a 30-mile radius, it looks like we are completely screwed. But then, Archer flies in to save the day. Archer declares that no one in Team Rocket gets left behind before using Fly, allowing us to quickly flee the scene of the crime back to Route 5. Thanks to our efforts in obtaining this technology, Team Rocket will be able to save millions. Petrol also apologizes for sending us out alone on such a dangerous mission. Having proven our strength and abilities, we receive our first promotion to that of a high-rank grunt. Andra is also promoted, even though I'm the one who fought off all the police and actually carried out the heist. Not only does this promotion come with a new outfit, but we also receive $125,000. We're rich again! Turns out, crime actually does pay after all. At this point in the game, we've managed to commit some crime and begun our climb up the ranks of Team Rocket. However, we still don't know much about Lance and his government or how Oak is involved. On top of that, there's also the mute trainer Red running around with a Charmeleon. So there's still a lot of questions surrounding this game. For now though, our next mission is to conduct a heist on the SS Anne. Apparently, the captain is holding a valuable jar that Giovanni is especially interested in obtaining. So Andra and I are tasked with stealing it. In reality, this plays out pretty similarly to the original games. After sneaking on board the ship, we fight our way through a whole lot of trainers in their cabins. It's also during this time that the egg that Archer gave us back on 5 Island finally hatches into Houndour. This is such a good Pokemon to get. Firstly, since a fire and dark type complements the rest of our team really nicely. But more importantly than that, Houndour just looks like the perfect Pokemon for Team Rocket, making it a very fitting choice as my next villain. So there's only one more spot left to fill on my team of supervillains. Back to the mission though, and after a while, we find Blue hanging out on board. Unlike last time in Mount Moon, this time Blue actually decides to battle us. While this fight isn't easy, we're still able to get the win, largely thanks to Ferret being an absolute powerhouse. Ultimately, our new Houndour is just able to clutch up against Wartortle, giving us a close win in the end. After Blue walks off, we briefly eavesdrop on a conversation between Lance and Lieutenant Surge. They don't drop any bombshells, but Lance does basically confirm that this government sees Team Rocket as a threat and has been actively trying to smear Team Rocket's reputation in the eyes of the public. Although, to be fair, robbing innocent people in broad daylight probably isn't helping Team Rocket's reputation either. After Lance and Surge leave the ship, that just leaves Andra and I to confront the captain and steal the jar, which he believes has some sort of link to pseudo-legendary Pokemon. To take the jar, we have to do it by force through defeating the captain in battle. Although, I'm not gonna lie, this is the hardest fight of the entire game so far. Most of our Pokemon are unevolved, while the captain is packing some serious heat. His Crawdon is a monster, basically wiping through our entire team. And very quickly, we are handed yet another loss. That was probably our most brutal defeat so far, and clearly our team needed to get stronger. So I spent some time grinding against the trainers and wild Pokemon to the east of Vermilion. This took a pretty long time, but it did allow us to gain some valuable levels. On top of that, our starter reached level 22, allowing it to finally evolve into Golbat. This gives our starter a much needed, generous stat boost, although it still doesn't have any hands. Regardless, with our team now looking much more formidable, we return to the SSN for a rematch against the captain. Leading with Qwilfish, we're able to slowly chip away at Seadra. We're not able to get the KO, but at least Qwilfish is able to leave it weak and poisoned by the time our fish falls. After that though, Furret continues being an evil monster. Secret Power can finish off the weakened Seadra. Then, with our newly learnt Brick Break, Ferret is just able to outlast the very menacing Crawdon. After also getting Pupitar low with another Brick Break, our evil team mascot finally falls. Phanpy hits the field next and just manages to survive a magnitude before Dig finishes Pupitar. The captain's final Pokemon is Shelgon, who is also holding a Leftovers, making it incredibly dangerous. Thankfully though, this is where our newly evolved Golbat makes its debut. With 2 wing attacks, Golbat is able to take down Shelgon, giving us a very close win against the captain. It may have taken 2 attempts, but with that, the captain was defeated and we were able to steal the valuable jar. For good measure, after the captain calls Andra a brat, she responds by using Poison Sting on the captain. Okay, Andra, I didn't realize you were that hardcore. With the captain poisoned and incredibly unwell, Andra and I flee the scene, leaving the SSN behind. Although, right after we escape, we do see Trainer Red boarding the ship. And after what happened the last time we fought him, I want absolutely nothing to do with that terrifying 10-year-old. At the very least, Red does seem to be following the same path as the original games. Putting that aside, with the jar obtained and another mission successfully completed, Andra and I then return back to base. Once we arrive though, there seems to be some sort of commotion as Lance is broadcasting an official announcement. He states that there will be new measures for the Kanto region. Firstly, Silph Co will now be the exclusive provider for all trainer items in the region, and small businesses will no longer be allowed to compete. Secondly, he states that Team Rocket is a hindrance on Kanto, and that anyone who assists Team Rocket in any way will have to face the full extent of the law. On top of that, Team Rocket are also banned from using any Pokemon, and Lance offers a financial reward for anyone who assists with the capture of any Team Rocket members. Oh no, what are we going to do now? What if we didn't wear a uniform that immediately told everyone that we're criminals? That's a stupid idea, Keegan. Being a rocket here seems so heavily stigmatized. Andra, I just watched you use Poison Sting on an innocent man. You are not the victim here. These new restrictions will definitely make things tougher for Team Rocket as a whole. However, on a personal level, we did just complete another mission. After handing over the jar to Petrol, we receive another juicy cash influx. On top of that though, we're also informed that having now proven our abilities, Andra and I will be transferred to the main Team Rocket base in Celadon City, where we will work directly with Giovanni. Clearly, we're slowly starting to work our way up the criminal ladder, and at least for the next little while, our journey in Team Rocket does start to accelerate. After defeating Andra in a rematch on Route 9, our Phanpy reaches level 25, evolving into Donphan. This thing is built like a tank and is especially useful since it now has the ability Sturdy. We then use the newly developed teleporter to transfer over to the main Team Rocket base in Celadon City. Once here, we finally come face to face with the architect of Team Rocket, Giovanni. First, Giovanni and Proton congratulate us for everything we've accomplished so far during our time in Team Rocket. Up to this point, our missions have mostly been about stealing and earning money for Team Rocket. However, now that we're high-rank grunts, our missions will focus more on helping to propel Team Rocket towards achieving its true goals. Over time, we'll get to learn more about what those goals are, as well as the current Kanto government. Alright Grunt, now tell me more about this mysterious trainer who was able to defeat Team Rocket inside Mount Moon. Well, sir, I do know that he had a Charmeleon, and I can't explain why, but I also have a small hunch that he might have a crippling weakness to crowbars. That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard, Grunt. Ultimately, Giovanni is suspicious about Trainer Red and just how strong he really is. However, our meeting with Giovanni is then interrupted by Koga, the Fuchsia City gym leader, who seems to be collaborating with Team Rocket, alerts Giovanni that a Kangaskhan has been spotted deep inside the rock tunnel. This is a problem since the Safari Zone, which Team Rocket partially owns, is usually the only way of obtaining Kangaskhan. So if they start being found in the wild, this will hurt Team Rocket's business. Giovanni then tells Koga that Team Rocket will handle this, but what he really means is Keegan will handle this, because investigating and capturing this Kangaskhan is our next mission. Now that we've got our new orders, I decided to spend some time exploring. Having Celadon City unlocked opens up a decent chunk of the map. Although, as a member of Team Rocket, we're not allowed to take on any of the gyms. And thanks to Lance's new restrictions, we're also not able to enter the Celadon department store. Regardless, Celadon City still has a lot to offer. For example, on the outskirts of the city, we're able to obtain the HM for Fly, which will be very useful for our Golbat. On top of that, remember earlier how I ran into a fisherman who alerted us to the fact that a guy in Celadon City had been bad-mouthing the Old Rod? Well, I was able to track down this heinous bully. To defend the honor of the humble Old Rod, we have to take on this guy in a battle. And I'm not gonna lie, his team is really strong. Pretty much all of our Pokemon fell instantly, with the exception of Donphan, who basically had to solo this fight. In the end, it was incredibly close, but by spamming Dig, our elephant was just able to hang on long enough to claim the 4th and final KO. After the fight, he vows to stop talking about the Old Rod. But this loser isn't important whatsoever. What is important is that after returning to the fisherman in Vermilion City, he rewards us with one of the strongest Pokemon ever, Magikarp. You might think I'm joking about my excitement towards this Magikarp. However, this is no ordinary fish, because this Magikarp has the ability Moxie, which means that it has the potential to become absurdly strong. With that, we had now assembled our full team of 6, some of the most diabolical, evil villains to ever walk the earth. Next, we turn our attention back towards our upcoming mission. We can only access the rock tunnel from the south, meaning we have a bit of a trek to get there. Along the way, there are a few important things that happen. Firstly, Houndour is able to reach level 24, allowing it to evolve into Houndoom, a demon dog that truly does have sinister intentions. On top of that, thanks to Magikarp holding the EXP share, our fish quickly reaches level 19. And with the help of a rare candy, Magikarp can then also evolve, giving us access to Gyarados. Everyone knows that Gyarados is strong, but with the Moxie ability, and the fact that Gyarados is a water dragon type in this game, this Pokemon is an absolute monster. With those 2 massive upgrades to our roster, we continued onwards towards Lavender Town. Once here, we find Professor Oak giving some sort of interview. During this, we learn that not only was Professor Oak a 7-time Pokemon League champion, but apparently, there's another former champion who has been removed from the history books. This mysterious Trainer X won the league 8 times. Oak denies having any memory of this, stating that Trainer X doesn't exist, which seems pretty odd. Regardless, that's where the interview ends. After that, we can now head north into the rock tunnel. Overall, this mission is pretty straightforward. After making our way through the cave, while doing an absurd number of battles, we eventually find Kangaskhan. However, it turns out that the very same scientist who we ran into in Mount Moon is also here, who then catches Kangaskhan for himself. So we battle him to try and take the rare Kangaskhan by force. But with the help of Quillfish's toxic spikes, Donphan just about sweeps through his entire roster with Dig. After that win, Proton arrives as backup. He then just straight up mugs the scientist, stealing all of his Pokemon. Scientist Miguel then vows to get his revenge, leaving us having successfully completed another mission. Now, this is the point of the game where things start to get spicy, because after returning to the Celadon base, not only do we receive some fat stacks of cash, but we're also hit with a revelation, as Blue is now working with Team Rocket. Apparently, Blue decided to work with Team Rocket back on Nugget Bridge earlier in the game. Blue is mostly driven by a desire to outshine Red and become the champion, earning the respect of his grandfather, Oak. So while he isn't a fully fledged Team Rocket member, our goals are somewhat aligned. Moving on, our next mission is in Lavender Town. By threatening to steal Cubone skulls, Team Rocket is able to lure Mr. Fuji into the tower. Our job is to then just buy time, while Fuji and Proton have a secret meeting. Although, while clearing through the trainers of Lavender Tower, a few notable things do happen. First, we see a cutscene of Giovanni meeting with Blaine back in Celadon HQ. Giovanni appears to be offering Blaine some work on a secret scientific project. However, once out of earshot, Blaine then implies that he may have already done a deal with the Pokémon League. Back in Lavender Town, we then come across some idiot grunts who straight up killed a Marowak. Yeah. I don't think that we can claim we're the good guys anymore. Anyway, to defend the lives of these useless grunts, I have to step in and take on Fuji in battle. Thanks to some more heroics from Donphan, this actually ends up being pretty simple, as we mostly just spam Dig. After the fight is over, Proton arrives, taking Fuji upstairs to have their secret discussion. Down here on the floor below though, this is where things get weird. Because first, we get approached by a cult member who then forces us into a battle. I have no idea who this Dusknoir cosplaying freak is or what is even happening here. Regardless, after our team deals with his ghosts, this weirdo states that I exist in a higher layer of reality. Yeah, this guy has absolutely been licking Politoads. After he takes off, we then have to fight a supercharged version of the Marowak ghost. This thing is just absurdly strong. And while I did brutally lose on my first attempt, I was thankfully able to take it down successfully on the second, thanks to some toxic Intimidate pivoting with Quillfish, as well as a little paralysis luck with Gyarados' bounce. Anyway, putting aside those two very strange occurrences, we then get back to reality. We receive a call from Blue, informing us that Red just defeated him and is on his way up the tower. As such, I head upstairs to alert Proton. We briefly overhear their conversation, which implies that Team Rocket has made some kind of offer to Mr. Fuji. Interestingly, Proton then has Team Rocket grunts guard Mr. Fuji to give Red the impression that Fuji is here against his will. This sort of plan to deceive Red is going to be a pretty common theme going forward. For now though, we return to Celadon HQ, and this is where Giovanni hits us with another major surprise. Because after blessing my bank account once again, Giovanni reveals that he's about to show us one of Team Rocket's biggest secrets. And that is the real base of Team Rocket. Turns out, this base under the game corner is just for show. Team Rocket's real lair is hidden even further underground. Only high-ranking grunts and above have access to this area. Not only is it massive, it also has shops where we can buy some very useful items, like EXP candy, TMs, and even more Pokemon. Team Rocket appears to be doing a lot of scientific research down here, and there are even more areas of the base that are still off limits for us. For now, since I've saved up so much money by committing crime and being Giovanni's pet, I decided to spend some money on upgrading our team. Firstly, by using the small EXP candy to bump everyone up to level 30. After that, I also bought a whole bunch of vitamins to give our team an added little boost. This game has had some incredibly tough fights, and I don't expect things to get any easier. But with my evil team now looking a lot better, and my finances looking much worse, we were ready to continue Team Rocket's takeover of the Kanto region. After exiting the deep underground base, we receive word that Red has infiltrated the building. All of the grunts are losing to Red, one after the other. However, this is where Giovanni begins his plan of deception. He makes an order for all executives and high-ranking grunts to hide underground, leaving only the weak grunts as well as Giovanni in the base. By intentionally using a weak team, Giovanni intends to lose to Red, fooling him into underestimating the true power of Team Rocket. So all of the high-ranking Rocket members flood into the secret underground base hidden from Red. While down here, we do have a brief rematch with Andra. However, by this point, our team has become pretty formidable, and Andra's team doesn't really stand a chance as it is right now. With the criminal mastermind Ferret dealing the final blow, we had once again dealt with our rival. A short time later, we receive a notice that Red has finally left the base. Giovanni then confirms that the plan went perfectly, with Red easily defeating Giovanni's fake team. With Red now under the impression that Team Rocket is pathetically weak, Giovanni gives us our next mission: to investigate Red so that we can learn more about who he is and why he's so strong. We're tasked with visiting Pallet Town and searching for any data that might be useful. Finally, Giovanni warns us to avoid Professor Oak at all costs, stating that Oak was a highly skilled trainer in the past. So, with our new mission obtained, we began making the journey towards Pallet Town. It's a pretty long trek with a lot of trainer battles along the way. There are also some side quests along the way, including one where we have to beat up that exact same scientist again. But eventually, we gradually make our way through Pewter City and Viridian before eventually arriving at our destination, Pallet Town. The very first thing we see is Oak entering his lab. We then begin our investigation. Blue's house is completely empty, and if we try to enter Red's house, we're quickly kicked out by his mother. This leaves only Oak's lab for us to investigate. However, once we enter, Oak is nowhere to be found, even though we just saw him walk in. There's no information about Red here, and all we can really do is steal a Bulbasaur. So we gladly steal the walking houseplant. I'm sure it'll look good on Giovanni's desk or something if we give it to the boss as a present. After taking Bulbasaur, we receive a call from Proton, summoning us back to HQ at once. But just before we can leave the lab, Daisy enters. Talking with one of the assistants, she mentions that Oak must be in Zone 0, which sounds very ominous. Daisy then notices me and the fact that I'm trying to smuggle out a Bulbasaur. She then asserts that she'll make us pay before our battle with Daisy then begins. Admittedly, her team is pretty threatening. However, Donphan just ends up being a beast, which has really been a recurring theme for most of our boss fights. Seriously, this guy is basically carrying my entire criminal career on his back. So, after an onslaught of digs buries the rest of Daisy's team, we're free to leave the lab and return back to HQ. Once back inside the deep underground base, we get to see Giovanni's real office, which is far more impressive than the tiny one on the floor above. We report our findings to Giovanni, who suspects that there could be more to Oak's lab than meets the eye. A secret underground base? That would be absurd. No one would ever do something like that. Shut up, grunt. After receiving more pocket money from my evil sugar daddy, Giovanni has assembled Andra, Blue, and myself for a very important mission. Team Rocket is trying to research and reproduce the power of the 3 sacred birds. And to help with that, the 3 of us will each be tasked with finding one of these birds. We're strictly told not to try and capture these birds, we're to only focus on defeating them and obtaining one of their feathers to aid in Team Rocket's research. My part in this mission is to track down Articuno, which will involve us taking the road south from Lavender Town all the way down to Fuchsia and then onwards to the Seafoam Islands. And look, I'm not gonna lie, this mission ends up taking a really long time, mostly due to the ridiculous number of trainer battles that we have to face along the way. The level curve in this game is also really steep, so skipping every trainer battle also isn't an option either. Once we eventually arrive in Fuchsia City, we see Koga being pressed by Bruno for his supposed involvement with the bikers and Team Rocket. Bruno states that if Koga doesn't act, he will be treated guilty too. Bruno, under orders from Lance, then states that he intends to go into the cycling road and clear out all of the bikers who oppose the Pokémon League. Once Bruno leaves, Koga spots us and urges me to stop Bruno. Conveniently, Koga claims that he can't do anything since he needs to maintain his position as gym leader. This is only a small detour on our way to the Seafoam Islands, but it's here that we commit possibly our most heinous crime of the entire game: walking on the cycling road. This truly feels like a crime against the Pokemon gods. Further up the cycling road, we find Bruno flanked by some police officers cornering a gang of bikers. Bruno preaches that Lance's government is the future of Kanto and tries to blackmail the bikers, basically saying that only by turning their backs on Team Rocket can the bikers maintain their freedom. If not, Bruno vows to destroy them. Thankfully, the bikers refuse to obey Lance, and before Bruno can retaliate, we intervene, ultimately forcing a battle with Bruno. He doesn't have his fully powered team with him, but Bruno is still stronger than he usually is in the base game, now boasting Pokemon like Steelix and Poliwrath. Despite being out-leveled here, thanks to our Gyarados being a borderline demigod, Bounce and Aquatail help us to rip through Bruno's 3 Pokemon, yielding us the win. Having been overpowered, Bruno vows to get his revenge, although he refuses to admit to Lance that he lost to a Team Rocket grunt. Yeah, I mean, imagine having to tell Lance that you lost to a guy with a furret. That would be embarrassing, wouldn't it? I hate you and that furret. After Bruno retreats, the bikers are incredibly thankful, stating that their loyalty to Team Rocket has now only grown stronger. So Lance's plan backfired, and I guess I am now also the public relations manager for Team Rocket. As a reward, the bikers hand us the Strength HM, and a short time later, Koga also gives us a VIP Safari Pass, which eventually allows us to get our hands on Surf. So now with the added capability of surfing on our pufferfish, we take our quillfish out for a spin towards the Seafoam Islands. Now, this next section of the game is relatively straightforward. After making our way through the Seafoam Islands, we eventually find Articuno, who we then have to battle. But while it may be a level 50 legendary Pokemon, this fight is also a 6-on-1. Combined with the fact that we have focus sashes from the Team Rocket base, it becomes pretty simple for Houndoom and Donphan to make light work of Articuno. Having obtained Articuno's feather, we then receive a call from Giovanni. Andra's side of the mission is not going so well. Her ambush of the power plant has been put on hold by the police, as well as Lorelei of the Elite Four. So we're tasked with heading over and offering some assistance. Basically, while Andra, Archer, and Petrel deal with Lorelei and the police, our job here is to handle Zapdos, which should be pretty simple, just like Articuno. Or so I thought. Zapdos is a much bigger threat than Articuno. Even with focus sashes, it still blows through more than half of my team with Ancient Power and Drill Peck. In the end though, the ever-reliable Furret is able to finish off the legendary bird. However, that's not where the trouble ends, because after taking a feather from Zapdos, we're approached by Surge. This guy is furious that we're targeting one of Kanto's legendaries, and we're immediately forced into a fight. This is a problem, since Surge is packing 5 Pokemon, while I've barely got 3. But this is where Gyarados really starts to show its power. Since it's a part dragon in this game, we aren't weak to electric like usual. This, combined with the attack boost that we get from Moxie, allow us to pick up some serious momentum as Aquatail and Dragon Rage, which is now just a regular dragon move, rip through Surge's Pokemon one after the other. With that, we had somehow beaten Zapdos and one of the Kanto gym leaders all in one go. Having tormented Lieutenant Surge, sadly, we aren't rewarded with a gym badge. After dishing out some threats about what Lance is going to do to Team Rocket, Surge retreats, taking his L to go. This allows us to escape out of the power plant before returning back to HQ in Celadon City. As I said, that mission was pretty long, but we did accomplish a lot, taking down an Elite Four member, 2 legendary Pokemon, and a gym leader. Turns out, Giovanni is incredibly pleased with our work. After handing over the 2 feathers from Zapdos and Articuno, Giovanni announces that both Andra and I will be promoted to Rocket Executives. Not only does this promotion come with another fresh outfit change, but we also receive a massive paycheck as Giovanni hands us a fat $500,000. Screw being a Pokemon trainer, being a criminal is way better. Now that we're executives, Giovanni decides to finally share the details behind the origins of Team Rocket. In short, the story goes something like this. 5 years ago, Johto, led by Lance, declared war on Kanto. The Kanto forces included both Oak and Giovanni, who had been close competitors for the champion title. Lance knew he couldn't defeat Oak and Giovanni as things stood, so in Lance's search for power, he tried to find Ho-Oh and Lugia, but had no luck. Instead, turning his efforts towards finding the Johto beasts, which he was eventually able to track down and capture. With his dragons, as well as the Johto beasts, Lance then began his invasion of Kanto. To try and stand up to Lance, Oak and Giovanni combined their resources and began pursuing the mythical Pokemon, Mew, which they were able to obtain. But Mew wasn't strong enough on its own, so with Fuji and Blaine's help, the Mewtwo project was born. After much effort, this led to the creation of Mewtwo, whose power they intended to use to help win the war. However, Mewtwo went out of control, escaping and disappearing. So, left with no way of fighting back, Kanto had no real choice but to submit to Lance. However, Oak immediately changed his allegiances, offering to help Lance and share his research. Oak then went on to identify Giovanni as the main threat to Lance's new government. In response, Giovanni fled and Team Rocket was born with the ultimate goal of getting revenge and overthrowing Lance. And so, much of Team Rocket's work has been to amass money and power, all without tipping off Red, Oak, or Lance as to just how strong we truly are. With that, Giovanni reveals our next big plan: to gain the support of Silph Co, then use their brand new Master Ball to finally catch Mewtwo and use its power to overthrow Lance's government. Before beginning our raid on Saffron City, as a Rocket executive, we now have access to another area in the underground base. This section has even more items, TMs, and Pokemon for sale. As a result, we're able to give our team a small bump in power with a few extra levels. So, with our team now looking stronger than ever, we then set out for Saffron City. Once we arrive, this mission plays out pretty much how you would expect. We venture through the Silph Co building, battling against its employees along the way. During this time, something significant does happen though, as our starter finally gets to evolve again, bestowing us with Crobat. Some Rocket grunts use crowbars, but I use a Crobat. After forging a path to the top of the Silph building, we confront the chairman, who turns out to be a massive Johto hater. Like, to the unhealthy degree that he even starts bad-mouthing Sentret and Spinarak. Say what you will about Johto, but no one badmouths Sentret in front of me and my diabolical furret. A battle then begins between me and the Silph president, whose team obviously only contains Kanto Pokemon. Regardless, our team quickly makes light work of his Pokemon, teaching this racist old man a lesson. Having lost, he immediately backflips, now offering me a job at Silph Co. But, you know, I'm doing pretty well for myself over at Team Rocket. Giovanni then arrives, and we leave him to conduct his meeting with the president. While Andra and I are standing guard, we do get approached by Bill and that same scientist who keeps following me. They're also trying to obtain the Master Ball, but after a quick rematch with Bill, in which Gyarados just continues doing Gyarados things, the pair of scientists retreat, with Bill promising to crush me the next time we meet. Giovanni then emerges from the meeting, announcing that the negotiation was a complete success. Team Rocket has gained the support of Silph Co, and more importantly, obtained the Master Ball. Giovanni then asks Andra and I to retreat. Giovanni intends to remain behind, intentionally losing to Red once again, giving off the impression that Team Rocket is finally done. After having my pockets filled up once again, we leave Silph Co behind. At this point, Team Rocket seems to be in total control, with the support of Koga, Fuji, and Blaine, combined with the current research into reproducing the power of the sacred birds. And on top of all of that, we now have the Master Ball, which we can use to finally finally capture Mewtwo. To make this even sweeter, Lance, Oak, and Red have no idea about Team Rocket's true strength. Our plan has almost come together, so while we wait for orders from Giovanni, I headed south from Pallet Town towards Cinnabar Island, since this is the only part of Kanto that we haven't visited yet. Obviously, it's only a small island, and there isn't a whole lot that we can do here, except explore the Pokemon Mansion. I was hoping to find some clues that would help us locate Mewtwo. However, instead, once we reach the basement, we begin to overhear a conversation. It turns out that Mr. Fuji is secretly meeting with Blaine. Supposedly, Blaine might be able to help us find Mewtwo. Mr. Fuji urges that now that Team Rocket have the Master Ball, this could be our only chance. When Blaine states that he heard that the Team Rocket Silph raid was a failure, Fuji explains the truth, that Giovanni convinced the Silph president to rebel. Despite that, Blaine refuses to believe, claiming that rebelling against Lance, the Pokemon League, and the Sacred Beasts is just not possible. As a last-ditch effort to convince Blaine, Fuji reveals that Giovanni now has the ability to clone the legendary birds. This revelation seems to shock Blaine, who then just goes on to say that he'll see what he can do. They both then leave, and this seems like it's all going to plan. However, that optimism does not last long, because once we return back to Rocket HQ, we see a cutscene inside Fuji's house in Lavender Town. He's in the middle of discussing the rebellion with Proton when all of a sudden, Surge bursts through the door. Flanked by police officers, Surge then places both men under arrest for their involvement with Team Rocket. While Proton is able to escape at the last minute using teleport, Fuji isn't so lucky, ultimately being arrested. The scene then shifts to the Pokemon Mansion, where we see Blaine meeting with Professor Oak. It's immediately confirmed that Blaine is the one who turned on Mr. Fuji. Oak and Blaine then confirm that only the two of them know the true location of Mewtwo, and they intend to keep it that way. Oak then explains that he plans to quietly and cleverly take control of Kanto, suggesting that he has his own plan for overthrowing Lance. It's also implied that Oak's plan here involves Red. With that back at the Rocket base, our plan has now been completely flipped on its head. Proton returns and informs us of Fuji's arrest, to which Giovanni correctly attributes to Blaine turning his back on Team Rocket. After which, another grunt then barges in, declaring that Lance has now updated the rules for taking part in the Pokemon League. Now, the 3 legendary birds are strictly banned from being used in the league, and just having these birds in your possession is enough to be arrested. Meaning that not only do we not have Mewtwo, now we're also not able to use the cloned legendary birds, making this whole situation a complete disaster for Team Rocket. In the face of this hopelessness and impending doom, Giovanni has one more plan, and that is to take on the league without using legendaries. Giovanni explains that Andra and I have already proven ourselves capable of taking on Kanto's strongest trainers. So our final mission is to take on the Pokemon League. No cheats, no crime, just using our raw abilities and the Pokemon that we've assembled during our journey. To make this possible, Giovanni then hands us a trainer license, which will allow us to finally enter the Pokemon gyms. With that, we had received our biggest and toughest mission yet. Defeating 8 gym leaders is no easy task, especially since they all have their fully powered teams. However, our team of supervillains is also powerful in its own right. So, while these gym leader fights are by no means easy, they also don't put up too much resistance against our villains. Our ragtag team of villains is actually surprisingly strong. Some of these fights were kinda close, but without suffering a single loss, we were gradually able to work our way through the first 7 gym leaders, slowly filling up our badge collection. However, in the case of the final badge, this is where things start to get wild. Normally, you would just fight Giovanni to claim the 8th and final badge, but for some reason, Giovanni wants to test me, revealing a secret underground portion of the Viridian Gym. What is it with this guy and his secret underground bases? In reality, this is just a gauntlet of various battles against strong, high-ranking Team Rocket grunts. During this onslaught, we do see a short cutscene of Giovanni with Silver. Silver is outraged about the news that Team Rocket is disbanding. He's disappointed in Giovanni. Giovanni doesn't reveal the truth, instead playing along with the public story of Team Rocket's downfall. Giovanni replies, "One day you will understand," before walking off. Silver vows to be stronger than his father, all by himself. Giovanni, now satisfied that Silver will distance himself from Team Rocket, vows to reshape the region. Which is all well and good, but meanwhile, I'm stuck in Battle Gauntlet hell. Seriously, after having just fought every single gym leader, and most of the Team Rocket military, to earn our final badge, we now have to defeat all three of Proton, Petrol, and then Archer. Of these, Archer is probably the most deadly, packing a Tauros, as well as a really tanky Donphan. Regardless, our team continues asserting its dominance, with Houndoom incinerating the final Scyther, giving us the win over Archer. With the 8th gym badge now obtained, our final task is to take on the Pokémon League and free Kanto from Lance's grip. Although even getting to the Pokémon League is a mission in itself. Not only do we have to fight Blue and his full team, despite now being on the same side, but we also have to fight every single one of the Badge Gate guards. For some reason, this is yet another gauntlet of 6v6 battles that the game forces us to endure. At this point, I was getting ready to just quit being a criminal and just go get a real job. But look, getting to the meat of the matter, after fighting our way through all of these badge gates, we reach the entrance to Victory Road, where Andra is waiting. To help prepare for what's to come, the two of us have a battle for some last-minute training. Andra's team has gotten a lot stronger, especially with her new lead, Electivire. Regardless, it's still not enough to stop us, as Furret once again deals the final blow, taking out Andra's Crobat with one last extreme speed, before her Tentacruel in the back also suffers the exact same fate. Having lost, Andra wishes us luck, before charging ahead to begin her challenge on the Pokémon League. Immediately afterwards, we receive a call from Giovanni informing us that we now have access to a special training room inside the Rocket HQ. This room contains a whole bunch of very useful items to give our team one last boost in power. I have no idea what horrors await us in the Pokémon League, but since I have $1.3 million to burn, I'm not taking any chances. So, with our team now buffed up to level 65 across the board, we quickly charge through Victory Road before arriving at our final destination, the Pokémon League, where our team, consisting of some of the most evil Pokémon ever conceived, will have to try and overthrow a government. So, having prepared as best we can, my team and I entered the Pokémon League. The Elite Four members are all the same as the original games, except with some slightly buffed up teams. That means that our first opponent is Lorelei and her ice types. My general approach for these fights is to lead with Quillfish. By setting up multiple layers of spikes, as well as toxic spikes, this gives us a pretty sizable advantage. But on top of that, Quillfish also knows Destiny Bond, which means that after setting up hazards, it also has the potential to take another Pokemon down with it. In the case of Lorelei, this helps us take down Dugong without any hassle. From here, the rest of this fight is very straightforward. After Houndoom quickly melts through Piloswine with Flamethrower, our Gyarados hits the field and begins building up momentum with Moxie. As a result, Dragon Rage and Crunch gradually clear through the rest of Lorelei's team, yielding us our first win of the Elite Four. In reality, that fight was pretty simple, and to be honest, the next two fights are both pretty similar. Bruno may have vowed to get his revenge after our last encounter, but this man is still a total pushover. Crobat has a great matchup into fighting types, clearing through the final Hitmontop with ease. Then, in the case of Agatha, her ghost types have a pretty glaring weakness to Houndoom's Dark Pulse, as well as Gyarados' Crunch, allowing us to finish her off without any trouble. So, with those three quick wins under our belt, we now move on to the far more deadly side of the Pokemon League, as our next opponent is Lance. The former leader of Kanto and Johto mentions that he is no longer the champion, as 3 trainers have just beaten him in quick succession. Regardless, he's still determined to make sure that my Elite Four challenge ends here. The battle begins and Lance's team is insanely strong. Quillfish is able to set up 1 layer of spikes and toxic spikes respectively before being buried by Gyarados' Earthquake. However, Lance's Gyarados has Moxie too, making this thing incredibly deadly. I need to deal with it quickly, so send out Donphan. A super effective play rough isn't enough to get the kill, but it does get Gyarados low. After then surviving an Aqua Tail, Donphan's Earthquake thankfully puts a stop to Gyarados. Although Lance's Kingdra then hits the field, instantly wiping out Donphan with a super effective Waterfall. At this point, Lance and I begin trading hits back and forth, as Crobat takes care of Kingdra with Fly, before Dragonite then fires back with Outrage. However, while I tried sending in Houndoom next, a Dark Pulse still isn't enough to get the kill, causing us to lose yet another Pokemon at the hands of Outrage. We'd now fallen too far behind, and I can't afford to just keep trading back and forth. So I send out my own dragon, Gyarados. Thankfully, we outspeed Dragonite as a Dragon Rage gives us the KO. Then, against the Dragonair that follows, another Dragon Rage earns us another kill, giving Gyarados its second attack boost thanks to Moxie. This brings the fight back to a 2v2, and thankfully, the Charizard that comes in next is immediately drowned out by Aqua Tail. This leaves Lance with only his Aerodactyl, who does try to cheese me with Flinch, but our second Aqua Tail connects, giving us a very close comeback win against Lance. Now, you might think that defeating Lance means that we've accomplished our goal. However, that's not exactly true. Despite our victory, Lance assures us that we stand no chance against the rising star from Pallet Town, Red. Following that warning, we then march into the champion's room. Once inside, we're met by Andra, who states that Blue was the champion, but is currently being massacred by Red. We then watch on as this scene plays out exactly like it did in the original games. Red defeats Blue before Professor Oak arrives on the scene to congratulate the new champion. After expressing his disappointment towards Blue, Oak takes Red and enters the Hall of Fame. Blue is completely demoralized, having tried so hard to earn the approval of Oak. His sadness then turns to anger, with Oak refusing to acknowledge Blue's strength even after he defeated the Elite Four. Blue then vows that what happened here today will not be forgotten. Blue then turns towards me and is midway through asking me to take down Red when we get interrupted by the police. They flood into the room, shoving Blue off to the side before completely surrounding Andra and I. Apparently, Bruno tipped them off as to who we actually are. Damn it, I will not have my criminal career ended by Bruno of all people. While we appear to be completely surrounded, Andra then has one of the coldest lines in the entire game. So, 9 cops. Is that all you have? Seriously, at this moment, I started to think that Andra might just be the coolest thief in Team Rocket because she just stole my heart. And as if she couldn't get any cooler, she then has her Heracross use close combat to break down the door to the Hall of Fame. We then charge towards the door, followed by the police. Andra then urges me to go through the door and take down Red, while she holds off the entire police force on her own. Ignoring the fact that Blue is not helping us here whatsoever, I ultimately follow Andra's plan and head inside the Hall of Fame. Here, we find Oak inducting Red's Pokemon and crowning him the champion. Oak then turns his attention towards us, stating that he knows who we are, who our boss is, and why we are here. Oak then goes on to criticize Giovanni, as well as his entire approach towards seizing power, pursuing Mewtwo, who Oak claims to be uncontrollable. In contrast, Oak believes that an unbeatable trainer is far more important. He then reveals that Red is the perfect combination of technology and humanity, implying that Red might be part man, part machine, which would somewhat explain why he doesn't really talk. After describing Red as a shell and a puppet, Oak states that whoever controls Red has the power to change everything. With full confidence in his creation, Oak then urges us to go ahead and face the wall that we will never surpass. And so, without a word and some beeping noises, Champion Red then forces us into a battle. The trainer who destroyed us all the way back in Mount Moon, who we now have the chance to get our revenge against. Red leads with his deadly Pikachu, so I switch out into Donphan, who soaks up the incoming Volt Tackle. Red then follows up with Silph, which I absolutely would have been dead against if not for the fact that Donphan has Sturdy. This allows us to land a massive Earthquake, picking up our first KO. However, Red then retaliates hard as his Lapras comes in next. This thing is such a monster that it proceeds to KO 3 of our Pokemon, one after the other, as Donphan, Qwilfish, and Furret all quickly fall. Running out of options, I once again send in our hard carry, Gyarados. I hit a Dragon Dance to boost up our stats, just hoping that we can survive the next attack, and we do! This allows Gyarados to finish Lapras with Dragon Rage. But our dragon wasn't done yet, because with our Moxie momentum now in full effect, a string of Aqua Tails and Crunches then rip through Red's Machamp, Espeon, and Snorlax in no time at all. And with Gyarados now completely supercharged, Red then sends out his final Pokemon, Charizard. The very same Pokemon who tried to end my criminal career all the way back in Mount Moon. But even Charizard isn't able to handle our Gyarados, as one final Aqua Tail takes care of Charizard, securing our win over the supposedly unbeatable Red. After the loss, Oak is completely distraught and shocked, basically refusing to accept what has just happened. But Oak's delusion is then interrupted. We had a deal, Oak. This turns out to be Lance, who then joins us in the Hall of Fame. Oak begins to stutter, and Lance is furious. Oak guaranteed Lance that Red would become an unbeatable champion, who the people of Kanto would gladly support. But in the end, Oak's experiment was conquered by a mere rocket. Oak begs Lance to give him more time to perfect Red, but Lance shuts him down, stating that we'll handle this my way. What are you going to do? Without saying a word, Lance walks off into a hidden room behind the Hall of Fame. Oak, now in a state of panic, can barely string a sentence together, but manages to utter that Lance is going to release the beasts. Lance then returns, declaring that he will do what he should have done a long time ago, govern the region with no mercy. By this point, he has completely lost his mind, declaring I am the state before our battle begins against the final boss, Emperor Lance. Boasting 6 Pokemon, Lance's final team is insane, including 3 Dragonites and the 3 legendary beasts from Johto. However, my team also contains legendary beasts like Donphan and Furret. Leading with Qwilfish, I first set up a layer of spikes. Lance then hits us with a big outrage, but Qwilfish just hangs on thanks to its focus sash. As a result, on the next turn, we can use Destiny Bond to make it an even trade, as both of our Pokemon fall, making it a 5v5. Next, I send in our deadly Furret as Lance's second Dragonite hits the field. My best option here is just to spam Extreme Speed, and while this isn't enough to take down Dragonite, we do get it low. As a result, once Furret falls, Crobat can pick up the pieces, as Fly evens things up once again. However, Lance's Raikou comes in next, and this thing is deadly. I try switching into Donphan for a better type matchup, but instead, Lance just uses Shadow Ball, which decimates my Donphan in just 2 hits. In response, I try sending out Houndoom to use Scorching Sands, but even that isn't enough to take down Raikou. Expecting Lance to heal Raikou, I resign myself to just using Destiny Bond, accepting the trade as both of our Pokemon go down. With only 2 Pokemon left, I send in our starter, Crobat. While our bat is able to hit Suicune with 2 cross poisons, it's not enough as our starter soon falls. As a result, now we're left in a 1 versus 3 against some of the strongest Pokemon in the game. However, our final Pokemon is Gyarados. After using a Dragon Dance to boost our attack and speed, I know that we probably need another boost if we want any shot of getting through the Dragonite's multiscale. So I take the chance using a second Dragon Dance, just praying that Gyarados can take another attack, and It does! Gyarados holds on before finishing the deadly Suicune shortly after. This is then followed by Lance's strongest Dragonite, who thankfully doesn't know extreme speed. And despite having multiscale, our Gyarados is so boosted now that we're still able to get the kill with just a single Dragon Rage. As a result, only Lance's Entei remains, but even it can't stop the overwhelming might of Gyarados, as one final Dragon Rage is all we need to secure the KO, as well as our win over Emperor Lance. In true Team Rocket fashion, we steal Lance's wallet. After losing, Lance is in complete denial, but it's here that Giovanni finally makes an appearance, stating that Lance's ego and arrogance are what led to his downfall. Or maybe it was just a really powerful Gyarados that I got from a random fisherman. Regardless, Giovanni congratulates us before claiming that nothing will be the same after this. Our team is then placed in the Hall of Fame, earning their rightful spot as the strongest and most evil team in history. Just look at these heartless, hardened criminals. Yep. Just 6 evil Pokémon. We then skip to a shot of Giovanni's office where Lance has been forced into submission. Giovanni demands that Red resign as champion and that he be isolated in a faraway place. Blue will instead take the role of champion. Lance is also to announce that Team Rocket has disbanded to remove any public suspicion or restriction on the Team Rocket members. And finally, Lance is also to remove all restrictions that were placed on the businesses in Kanto. In response, Lance doesn't put up any resistance, simply walking out without saying a word. Giovanni then congratulates us once again. He confirms that the sacred beasts have now been released back to Johto, and with us now having helped Giovanni to achieve the primary purpose of Team Rocket, he grants us one last promotion to Rocket Admin, which of course comes with another fat stack of cash. In addition to that, he also entrusts us with the cloned versions of the 3 legendary birds. With that, the Kanto government had now seemingly been restored to order, ending the first main chapter of this game. With that said, there's still a lot of mystery surrounding Professor Oak. On top of that, this game also extends into Johto and eventually Hoenn. So if you'd like to see more of this game, let me know in the comments below. Regardless, having overthrown Lance's government and become a Rocket admin, our criminal journey comes to a close, at least for now. Jump into this video next for more Pokemon content. As always, a huge thank you to all of our channel members for continuing to support these videos. And let me know if you want to see more fan game content in the comments below. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.